the state of India's environment, which we do every fortnight through our magazine Down to Earth, every day through our website on Down to Earth. But this is, and of course, through our annual report, which I hope many of you have seen and many of you read. This is an opportunity where we look at the same environment and the issues in front of us, but through numbers. And each year, my colleagues at Down to Earth, Richard Mahapatra, Rajat Sen Gupta, and Kiran Dwivedi have been putting out this fantastic publication, which helps us to understand what is the state of India's environment in terms of from the data. What data is showing us? I mean, data is powerful because it can tell you a full picture, but more than that, and what we have tried to do this year is to give you some idea of the trends that exist. Now, even before we launch this report, I have to qualify, and I would like you to please understand, we have done our best, and I'm speaking on behalf of Richard, Kiran, and Rajat. They have done their best to look at what data exists. Now, this report's limitation is not the creation of our creation. If at all there are limitations because the data does not exist. And I think it is important for us to do this because it also tells us where are the data gaps. It tells us where we need to collect more information on a regular basis so that we can complete the picture. Now, we have also very carefully, and as Richard, Rajat, and Kiran will tell you, we have used government sources of data. Because particularly when you're looking at the state of India's environment, it is too big a picture for us to piece together from alternate sources. We need to have uniform data. It has to be homogenized between states, and it has to have a trend. Now, given all that, we are presenting to you what is the best data that is available and that we can use to make a trend picture out of. And I hope that at the end of this report, and I hope that as we move on, we will be able to work and to put out that where are the really serious gaps in data and what we need to do to make sure that we can keep improving the data so that we can let data speak for itself. Data is powerful. I mean, it tells you a single story in one figure, and it is easy to communicate. It is important for policy because at the end of the day, when you get the information through numbers, you know what you need to do next. So I think all this is part of our effort to build a more cohesive, holistic picture of what's happening to India's state of environment, to identify the gaps and to learn from the gaps so that we can actually make sure that we can keep getting better at both the management of the environment as well as to make sure that where we know where are the problems, we can sort them out. And that's really the purpose of the work that we have done. So with those words, let me ask my colleague, Richard, to show us the cover of the report and so that we can launch it together. So Kanya, what we will do is to see the cover of the report, and as we have so many wonderful friends who have joined us, maybe we can ask them to all put on their camera for a minute and we can take one picture of everyone together. It would be very nice. So Richard, please. Richard, full screen.
So this is the...
Richard, you're still not full screen.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So thank you, Sunita ji, for e-releasing the report. And this is the cover of the report.
Wonderful. So congratulations, Richard, Rajit, and Kiran. I'm sorry, friends have their hands up. Right now, I'm not opening up for discussion. So Vijayji, we will open up only post the presentations. So please bear with me. But I would like to take a photograph of everyone. So Richard, if you can put your screen off for 1 minute, and let's take a photograph of all our friends together. It's been a long time, and it is wonderful to see everyone. So if everyone can put their photo on, and Sukanya, you're the master of ceremonies. You need to make sure you get us a good photograph. Yes. And put on your face as well, my dear. Good.
It's done now.
Wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining. And I'm now we have 3 presentations, which will give you an overview of the report. And then I look forward to discussing with all of you the questions you have. And of course, looking forward to a continued conversation on these issues. Richard, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Sunita ji.
Also full screen again, Richard. I'm sorry, there's some glitch at your end. You still have to do full screen.
Showing full screen here.
You had got it right.
Still not showing. Can I start? I think some issue.
Okay, start. Go ahead.
So thank you, Sunita ji, for releasing. And just to introduce, as you know, Sunita ji has informed, we have the State of India's environment that comes every January also. That's the printed and the articles and analysis part. This one is completely data-centric evaluation of state of affairs in environment and development. And it comes to you on the Environment Day. And we release you just a day before the Environment Day. And what it does, it basically gives you the analysis of all the existing data about all the parameters within our domain, like environment and development, and we analyze them. Around the year, we come across many data sets or many studies or many rankings being released, but each of them is on a specific parameter, specific theme. But we believe that at the end of the year, all this isolated data set remain cold statistics. If these are not processed, then we are not telling a larger story, what the data means for us. So down to earth and Center for Science and Environment researchers and journalists are always around the year collate and comprehend data from more than 100 sources to put this report. And as you have been insisting, this data mostly come from government sources because they actually release the long data sets, and also coming from different multilateral bodies and other statistical organizations like the National Statistical Office of India. So we monitor them around the year, and we collect them, comprehend them, and process them, just to tell what is the status. And the report that we just released is all about that. And this is the 8th one that we have been doing, releasing a data-centric evaluation of various themes in environment and development. You can see all the last 7 covers of the reports. So,
Richard, your presentation is not working. We're still only on the cover page. Have you moved your presentation?
I think I'm just
can you just fix it, please?
Yeah, fixing. Full screen means.
Kishore, I think you should stick around and stay there only with Richard.
Yeah, something is issue with the laptop.
Is it showing now? Full screen?
No. I think just Kishore, I would suggest that you you close it and reopen it, Kishore. Something is a problem with this. Please fix it. Sorry, everyone, just bear with us for 1 minute. We had done a trial run, but as technology is, it defeats you, whether you like it or not. So just... Vijay ji, I'm sorry, I'm not opening it up right now. I'd suggest if you have a really urgent question, aap chat mein pooch lijiye. I will not open it up right now because I want to get the presentations done. So I'm sorry, just bear with me. Because if I do, then I'll have many more friends who want to talk. And it's always nice to have our friends there. But please forgive me for this.
Is it showing, Abhi?
No, nothing. So it isn't even on right now. Kishore, jara dekhiye kya karna hai. I think it's a heavy file. Maybe that's why, but just see. It was working when we did a trial run. Yes. But now get to full screen. Now it's showing, but get to full screen. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. But yes.
So as I said, this is our data-driven and assessment, and just to wrap it up because it got disturbed. So we get to see various data sets on each parameter on one theme like forest survey and all these things. But what this report does is, around the year, our researchers and journalists actually collate it, comprehend it, and process it and present this report just to give you what is the status. So basically, the larger story is told through data. And these are all the last 7 covers of the SOE in figures. So this time, as Sunita ji has said, this time the SOE has a unique feature, or the first one that we are beginning with. What we are doing, we are ranking the states on environment and development performances, besides the other chapters. Besides the other thematic chapters that go into the report. So why we have done this? We get many indexes in the year, each of them evaluating whether the state of state's performance on education, on health, on drinking water supply. What we have done is basically we have evolved our own parameters and have ranked the states on environment and development themes. Because we believe that development is multidimensional. You cannot take one parameter and judge a state or the country on its environment and development performances. So we have brought together many parameters in these 2 themes to rank the states. And this first ranking of states on environment and development is basically based on 4 themes: environment, agriculture, public health, and public infrastructure and human development. And as I said, we define development is multidimensional. So these 4 dimensions we feel are critical to have an overall sense of development in environment for the states. And we have deployed 32 indicators altogether for these 4 themes to rank the states. And again, all this data come from government source only, Government of India source. and it's based on all their major surveys and indices. And the methodology that we have applied is the most widely used methodology to rank on any development parameter, and it's also used by government for many of these their own rankings on specific things. So what the result shows. Now look at the environment. Oh, sorry. So if you look at it on the environment parameter, the indicators that we have used are change in forest cover first, share of total municipal solid waste that gets treated, because that's one of the critical, indicator and a contemporary challenge also in keeping our environment safe. Then change in installed grid of renewable power, or simply what it means, how much renewable power we have hooked into the grid, and change in number of polluted river stretches that gives a sense of quality of water. Then stage of groundwater extraction, how much you are extracting or how much you are recharging, and also state of water bodies. So for environment, these are the indicators on which performance the ranking has been done. So if you look at it on environment parameter, the top 5 states are Telangana, Gujarat, Goa, Maharashtra, and Haryana. And you can see the list, complete list there. But what it tells us, Telangana, in fact, is the only state that has scored up to 70% in the rank in the out of 100%, and it has topped. Altogether, 27 states have performed in the range of 30% to 70%. If 30%, if you take by the normal examination syllabus also, that's the pass mark. But in 30 to 70, 27 states have performed within that range. And only 6 northeastern states in the bottom 10 states, means their performance have not been that great. So this is on environment parameters. Now come to agriculture. So what are the indicators for agriculture? So we have taken the first parameter that also gets the maximum weightage is net state value added by agriculture. That includes forestry, fishing, and also the crop and the livestock also. Second indicator is change in food grain production. Third is change in horticulture production, because that's one where actually the main earning and livelihood part is being taken care of instead of the food grains part. Change in milk production, that itself shows the livestock economy. Change in egg and poultry production, again, livestock belongs to the livestock component of agriculture, and which is driving the agricultural growth in the country. Change in meat production, then share of crop area insured under all insurance schemes. At this time of climate crisis, your crop insurance is a critical indicator, how you are actually protecting the farmers and the farms. And share of degraded land in state's total geographical area, because that's the fundamental to farming. So these are the parameters. And which are the top 5 states under agriculture? Madhya Pradesh tops the list, then Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttar Pradesh, and Tripura. These are the top 5 states. And to sum it up in this, you can see the complete list there. Again, the top ranking state, that is Madhya Pradesh, is the only state that scored 70% out of 100. There are 25 states again, which actually performed in the range of 30% to 70%. And 3 states that have a score less than 3 or 30%. So this is for agriculture. Now come to public health. It's a very critical parameter under the theme of environment and development. And the indicators for public health that we have incorporated in this ranking and given weightage. First, share of health sector expenditure. That's the first one that indicates whether a state is actually spending more on health. Those implicating that the state is serious about health. Infant mortality rate. That's very critical for a healthy future. Maternal mortality rate. Share of pregnant women vaccinated, because that's overall gives you a sense of the protection for pregnant and lactating mother. Then the children vaccinated, the number of government beds available. It's one of the universal indicator for judging performance on public health. Doctor shortfall in primary health center, whether the first port of call for any of our health issues, and the operationalization of health and wellness centers. That's turning out to be now the hub of very local healthcare systems in India. That's the hub of local healthcare system. So what are the findings? Which are the top 5? Delhi tops this list under this theme. Second is Sikkim, third is Goa, fourth is Mizoram, fifth is Manipur. So these are the top 5 states under public health. Again, unlike the last two rankings, here none of the states actually scored 70%. And 25 states performed in the range of 30 to 70%. And 4 states actually have scored 30 or less. In fact, less than 30. So this, if you look at it on the public health, overall performance is not that exciting or not that, what it should be. Next in the ranking is public infrastructure and human development. So when development is multidimensional, this one is one of the critical. If the human development and the required public infrastructure is not supporting, you can't have a proper human development in the country. And that's why it's a critical indicator also, parameter also. And what are the indicators we used under this parameter? Unemployment rate, retention rate of elementary school level, because admission to school is good, but how many students are being retained in elementary education will decide how literate we will be, and how literate we are will decide what is the level of human development and what kind of public infrastructures money is being pumped into education. Total fertility rate, the less it is being considered as a good sign. Population control is happening. That's also about, women's own rights and autonomy. Rural household with tap water supply, it's a major national goal to have every household with tap water supply. Then the percentage of households where firewood, chips, and crop residue is the primary source of energy for cooking. This is a negative parameter. These are all considered to be unclean fuels. So this has come as an indicator. Then the percentage of energy supplied versus required. That basically shows you the energy poverty. How much energy I need and how much is supplied. If there is a gap, then there is a energy poverty. Then the percentage of municipal solid waste being processed. That's one of our biggest crises that I have already mentioned, waste management. So which are the top 5 states under this? Gujarat tops the list. Second, Sikkim. Third, Delhi. Fourth, Telangana. And Karnataka is the 5th. Now coming to the overall ranking and the messages out of it. In this ranking, if you look at it, public infrastructure and human development, only 8 states scored that golden limit of 70% plus or 70% and above. 20 states featured or performed in the 30% to 70% rank. Jharkhand is the only state that scored less than 3. So again, if you compare with the last 3, these parameters are also not that exciting. But what are the key messages? These are all rankings, we just went through it. But if you just analyze all the rankings, all the top, top 5 states in each of these parameters, and if you look for the messages, what it shows is basically even the top ranked states, like the top 5 in each themes, are struggling in crucial indicators. Not all of them performed equally in all the themes. That's one, like Telangana top in the environment things, but it's due to the change in the forest cover, but its performance on the state of water bodies and the performance in water pollutions or like the river pollutions, it's not that up to mark. And if you put it together, ideally 20 states should have performed in the 4 category in the top 5. Only 16 actually feature. Not all the states are featuring, not all the top 5 are featuring all across 4 themes. So it shows also that development, what our ranking is showing, that in not on all the development and environment parameters, states are, even the top ranking states are performing equally and adequately. They do top the list as per current ranking. But there is something interesting. Small states like the northeastern states, even Delhi is a small state, even Goa is a small state. Small states seem to be performing well in the rankings on all the 4 themes. Why, how, that's analysis is there, you can see it there. But these are the actually 3 broad key messages out of our ranking. So this is the part of the ranking and how we have done it. But State of India's environment 2023 in figures not just does the ranking. This is first time we have done the ranking of the states, but it covers wide themes like climate change, energy, health, rivers, environmental crime, displacement, agriculture, farmer suicide. So it's all there. And each of these themes, there are messages that come as a warning, good and bad. Now I request to Sunita ji to allow Rajit and Kiran to take us through the other part of the state of states.
Thank you, Richard. Richard, there was a question that I just give a quick response to as well, because so that there is no confusion. So in the state of states, all data has been sourced from government data sources, which we cannot combine data which is differing. And the idea was to find indicators which would help us to understand the different states and to rank them. Now, obviously, if we had the ability and we had a census department behind us, we could go to state and do ground verification. But that's not the purpose of this report. This report complements the report that we do in the State of India's Environment Report. It complements the down to earth. And this one provides us an overview based on data. And we've made all the indicators, data sources available for you to understand what indeed is coming out from this analysis. Rajit, if I can now request you to take us through the other elements of the State of India's Environment Report in figures and the analysis that you have done.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So,
a little louder, yes, and also full screen.
Yes, ma'am, I'm just doing it. Perfect. So what Richard talked about was the fact that we have for the first time done a ranking. And what we broadly found was that even the best states are facing a lot of challenges when it comes to the parameters that we've looked at. So taking that forward, what Kiran and I in our presentation will be talking about is, I will talk about the chapters within the book that tell us how human activities are causing or exaggerating the climate crisis that we're facing. So I'll be looking at the human impact on climate, so different aspects of it. And then subsequently, Kiran will look at the cost humans are paying because of deteriorating climate crisis or the changing climate that we are seeing. So these are snapshots that we picked up in the book, and we basically try to piece them together to get a bigger picture. So the first thing that comes out is that waste management is a massive challenge that India is facing. So the first slide over here, we've looked at one type of waste, that is municipal solid waste, the urban waste that is coming up. And what we found is that while reporting has improved over the years, if you can see the graph at the bottom, according to government data, it shows that 50% of the municipal solid waste is being treated today, which is much more than what was happening in 2015-16 when only 19% was being treated. But when we stacked up all the numbers, we found that of the total municipal solid waste that has been generated in the country, 32% of the municipal solid waste, we don't know what happens to it, whether it is being treated, whether it is reaching landfills, or whether it is just being forgotten completely about. So when we spoke to experts within CSC, we realized that these are the solid waste that end up choking our drains. So the agency doesn't know what is happening to it. So that is one big picture that we came up with. We also realized that 6 of the 10 states with the highest unaccounted waste was in Northeast and East India. So if you also look at the map, you can see that that is the chunk that is the darkest. So this is the area where we don't know what is happening to the municipal solid waste that is being generated. Moving on from there, we looked at 2 other streams. So first is hazardous waste. This is basically industrial waste, and it is classified as hazardous because of the potential to cause harm to the environment and also to individuals. So when we looked at it, India has seen an 18% increase in such industries which are classified as hazardous waste generating industry, which is a sign of development. So one of the industries that come under it is paint industry comes under it. Automobile, I think, and some ancillary also comes under it. So on the one hand, we are seeing that it is expanding. But if you look at the right, we realize that so all of these industries should provide an annual report to the state pollution control boards. So there are 79,000 such industries right now that we have in India. We realize that 32% of these are not submitting their annual returns. So that was another thing that we realized, a similar problem. So in the first, in municipal solid waste, we don't know what is happening to a chunk of the waste. Similarly, over here, the hazardous waste, we don't know how they have been treated or whether they have been treated or not. So the raw data is also not available for them with the government. Moving on, legacy waste. This is basically the waste that is already there in the landfills for years together. So India has under Swachh Bharat Mission, the 2.0, there is a target to clean up all the legacy waste that is there in the landfills. So 2023 is for the cities, for the states with smaller legacy waste. So there is a quantification that is there. And 2024 for the bigger states. So the entire legacy waste should be cleaned up by 2024, according to Swachh Bharat Mission. What we found was that till 2023, I think we've looked at data till about March. So 71% of the legacy waste remains unremediated. So it is the way it was earlier. And 11 of the states are yet to start. So if you look at the graphic on the left, all the ones with 100%. So these are the states that have not even started to look at the legacy waste so far. This just shows how much of a challenge it remains again. So waste management is a problem that we saw in all the 3. And finally, plastic waste is another thing. So last year, India banned plastic, single-use plastic in the country. So since then, we could not find any government data in terms of whether it is being implemented properly or not, how much waste has been generated, plastic waste has been generated in the country. So what because of the dearth of information that existed, what we looked at is, along with the ban, Central Pollution Control Board came up with a mobile phone application where consumers or citizens could click photographs and register complaints of illegal use of plastic. So we looked at the performance of that mobile phone application, and we found that complaints were registered from 138 cities across India, and 81 cities there was not a single complaint that was redressed by the Central Pollution Control Board. So you can see again the problem with the implementation part of it. So citizens are registering complaint. Initially, they were registering complaint. So even if you look at the bottom, there is on the blue graph on the left. That is basically month on month how much complaint has been registered. So in the initial months, it was going up, and now it has started to plateau. So this is a cumulative number. So now it has started to plateau. That basically means that people are losing interest. And one of the reasons could be that there is very low compliance, or the complaints have been redressed at a very, very slow rate. Moving on from there, now this is a global thing that we realize, and this has been a challenge that with plastic waste in general. Globally, last year it was decided that by 2024, countries would come up with a global plastic ban, which was a very positive and very bold decision. Within 2 years, they wanted to come up with a plastic ban treaty. So recently, the meeting happened. So prior to the meeting, so one of the meetings, a series of meetings are going to happen before the text is finalized. So prior to the meeting, member states, all the countries were asked to submit what kind of a shape they would want the plastic ban to take. So what we've done over here is we have looked at the keywords that are there in the member state submissions. And what we realized is that plastic is still being looked at as a waste problem. So we are just looking at the last leg of the challenge, but we are not looking at it as a production problem. So if you look at the keywords that are over here, so only 10% of the member states who have submitted their plans, they talked about banning or looking at plastic as at the entire life cycle. So they've talked about how the petrochemical industry, which is providing the raw material, they should also be looked at. How the producers of plastic should also be brought within the ambit. And finally, obviously, how the waste that is generated, plastic waste that is generated, how it can be looked at. So only 10% of the countries were looking at it in their entire life cycle. All the others were only talking about what will happen once the waste is generated. And we know as an experience, with our experience, that it is very difficult to clean up once the waste is already generated. So it is the entire process that should be looked at. Moving on from there, waste management is a challenge. We looked at river. And in river, we realized that 603 river bodies were monitored last year by CPCB. And out of that, 279 rivers. So this includes the major rivers and also the tributaries and the smaller rivers as well. So 46% of the rivers are still polluted, even though if you look at the numbers down below, you realize that in 2018, there were 323 rivers. Now it is 279, so it has come down. So that basically means work is happening. However, 46% of the rivers are still polluted in India. So the methodology that CPCB had used was they had picked up samples from different locations in the on the river bodies, and they had checked the BOD levels, which is basically whether the river water is fit for taking for bathing, outdoor bathing. So what we found, if you look at the locations or the stations, if you look at it, so 817 locations were polluted. And out of them, 109 locations had pollution levels that were extremely high, 10 times more than what is permissible in terms of BOD. So that they are extremely polluted stretches. So that is another thing. So river pollution is another thing that emerges out of it because of human activity. The recently released water bodies was another census that came out. We looked at it and we found two interesting points. One was that even though urban bodies obviously have very small share of India has very small share of water bodies, we realized that every fourth water body in urban India is not in use. And we know that the role water bodies play in terms of when there are flash floods and all. So they basically work as sponge that can hold on to the excess rain that comes in and the excess water that comes in. So we realized 1 out of every 4 water body in urban India is defunct. In rural areas, it was 1 out of every 7, which was much better, obviously. And in 8 states and UTs, 40% of their water bodies were not in use, both rural and urban combined. So these states are Karnataka, Delhi, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, and Haryana. So 8 of these states have more than 40% of their water bodies that are not in use. So another extension of what is happening because of urbanization. Then we have also looked at biodiversity, and especially at tiger and elephant deaths. Tiger, because we recently got the tiger census, where we've seen that the tiger population in India is becoming healthier every year. So it is stabilizing in a way. So over here, what we're looking at is the number of tiger deaths that happen in India. So we've looked at 3 years, 2019, 20, and 21. So we realized that close to 20% of the, there's been a 20% increase in the tiger deaths between 2022 and 2021. So there's a 20% increase. So 127 tigers died. What I also found very interesting from data point of view is that 104 of these deaths, which is basically the orange bar that you see, chunk of the bar, 104 is the reason why these deaths happen. So they say that it is under scrutiny. So there are the other reasons are poaching or natural death or unnatural deaths, but they don't know the reasons so far. So 104, the reasons are still unknown, is something that I found very interesting and unfortunate as well at the same time. Similarly, if you move on and we look at the elephant deaths in India, and so again in elephant deaths, some 389 deaths have happened in the entire period from 2018-19 to 2021-22. And 71% of these deaths have happened because of electrocution. That basically shows how urban spaces and how we are encroaching in maybe the elephant corridors and how the biodiversity is shrinking and how they're coming close to human habitation. So electrocution was the reason for 71% of these deaths. Another substantial chunk is was train accidents. So the yellow or the light yellow bar that you see, that is the next biggest chunk, is due to train accidents. So electrocution and train accidents are perhaps the two most important reasons for elephant deaths in our country. Moving on from there, what we also looked at was, so this is one of the very few data sets where we've looked at international agencies and not really at government data source only. So I think there are 2 or 3 such data sets that we've looked at. So this is the tiger trade that is happening in India. So on the one hand, we know that tiger population is increasing in India, which is a very, very positive step. So if you look at the green bar on the left bottom, that shows the tiger population in India and how it is going up. But tiger trade, India has also emerged as a tiger trade or illegal tiger trade hotspot. So if you look at it, 34% of all the tiger seizure incidents that happened globally, they happened in India. And this is the time period is for 20 years from January 2000 till June 2020. And this is the highest tiger seizures incidents that have been reported globally. And we also see that there has been a 21% increase in such incidents in India over the past 4 years. So that basically means on the one hand, we are increasing the population of tiger, but at the same time, we are seeing a surge in illegal tiger trade in India. So this is something that we have to be very mindful of and take care of. Finally, so we have also looked at an extension of this is just to understand and very broadly talk about it, is the fact that environmental crimes in India is filing. This is something that we have looked at over the past years as well. So over here, what we've looked at is the different environmental crime cases that are registered and that go to court. So the 64,471 number is the number of cases that were registered for environment in 2021. And further on, there are the number of cases that were there to be looked at in the entire year. And finally, how many cases? 89,000 cases were pending at the end of the year. So they could not go to trial because of the backlog that exists. So 64,000 were added in that year. More than that was left at the end of the year. 89,000 was left at the end of the year. And what we also found interestingly is that if you look at it, bulk of it basically is on cigarette smoking, which is one of the crimes that come under environmental crimes. So over there, cigarette smoking and fines that have been levied under it. Over there, a lot of cases are easily being pushed off or taken care of. But important cases like we looked at cases that are registered under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So we realized that 3,747 such cases were pending for trial at the end of 2021. And our estimate is that it will take 11 years to clear up this backlog if we consider that the courts perform at the same rate. So last year in 2021, they were clearing 1 case a day, roughly 1 case a day when it comes to crimes cases that were under wildlife protection. So 11 years and 30 days is what the time the courts will take at its current pace if it wants to clear up the backlog. And every year, obviously, new cases are also coming up. So that explains why maybe crimes against wildlife is also going up, because we know that the implementation or checking such crimes is a problem in the country. Finally, energy is another bit that we looked at, and we realized that this is something that also reflects in our rankings as well. That even after so many years, obviously LPG, so this is on the left-hand side, we're looking at the cooking fuel, the primary cooking fuel that is used by households in India. So LPG uptake has obviously gone up over the years. You can see the bars at the bottom, and it is compared from 1999 till 2000. On the left-hand side is the firewood consumption. On the right-hand side is the LPG consumption. But still, 33.8% households in India are using unclean fuel sources. What we also realize is the fact that in rural India, it is 46.7%. That is almost 1 out of every 2. So we are talking about 1 out of every 2 households in rural India is still using unclean fuel sources after so many years of independence. So that is another thing that we realized. However, on the bright side, and this is something that we found was very, very positive, is the fact that India has recently revised its emission intensity reduction rate of its GDP globally. So the NDC targets, and under it right now, it plans to reduce the emission intensity by 45% by 2030. So it's basically around 7 years from now, compared to the 2005 levels. So we found index, energy efficiency index. So we realized that on the one hand, obviously India has to reduce its total emissions. The other is that it can also be, a bulk of it can also be ensured if the energy efficiency of the industry and other sectors are also taken in charge. So the government of India came out with an index last year. And so it comes out with this index annually. So what we found, and this is something that we found was very positive, is the fact that 27 states and UTs have increased or have increased their energy efficiency score. So that basically means that they're focusing on energy efficiency. The only limitation that we found, so in this index, we've looked at, or the government has looked at different sectors. So industry is one, transportation is another, then discoms is another. So they've looked at the energy efficiency for all of these. So what we found was that in industry, only 11 states have improved their efficiency score from last year, which was, I think, which was the lowest compared to the other sectors. And industry is obviously the I think around 58% of the total energy consumption in India is so industry is responsible for it. So over here, the improvement in terms of energy efficiency is slower than the other sectors. However, positive change is coming up over there as well. So over here, I'll just stop my presentation. So we've looked at the different ways in which humans are impacting climate change or worsening the environment around us. And from there on, Kiran is going to take over. So Kiran, if you can just take over, I'll just
Thank you, Rajat, and thank you. Please, Kiran, go ahead, and then I'll open it up for some interesting questions have come. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajat. So my presentation is all about how the climate change has been affecting us, and so why we should worry about the indicators that Rajat has been talking about. And with the next few slides, you will realize that it's a crisis that we cannot ignore anymore. People often question us, is it really happening? Should we really be aware of this? We will be concerned about these challenges. And yes, the book clearly shows that. And in fact, this year has been remarkable because there have been many reports that have been released this year, globally and nationally as well. The reports talk about how climate has been impacting us. For example, the IPCC report, global report, has clearly showed that it's a crisis that we all have to be concerned about. Now, our report further adds to the evidence. And the first slide that you see over here is all about how India has been suffering from extreme weather events. So, let me introduce you to the database of climate weather, the event that we had launched last year. And so this is a comparison that we have done based on a database of the last year and this year. But we clearly found that the extreme events in the country have been on the rise. And in fact, if you see, we have done this analysis on the basis of days of which extreme events have happened in the country. So last year, of the 365 days, on 314 days, the country had experienced extreme weather events. And if you see, the damage because of that was huge in terms of human deaths and the impact on crops as well. But and if you further go deep down, you realize that despite that, the estimates of loss and damage that we have covered and that we found have been underestimates, because we could find some gaps on how it's being estimated across the country. Okay, that's one part of the fact sheet in this book. Now, the other part of this fact sheet is all about the changes between last year and this year. So last year, in the first 4 months, Jan to April, the country had seen 89 extreme events. And this year we have seen 84 extreme events. Okay, the number of days with events is just 4 days less. But the damage that we have experienced in the first 4 months of this year is huge. In terms of crop area loss is multiple times than the last year. We have the estimate in the book. Secondly, we also found an interesting change in the weather, and that's you can clearly see in the graphic on the right-hand side of the fact sheet. With the first 4 months of 2022, heat wave was a topic that made all of us concerned about. In fact, you may all remember March was the hottest month in the country, and it was the hottest month across, in fact, in 100 years of since the country has the records. Similarly, April also was very hot, as if you go by the government records. Now, this year, if you see, the weather is very pleasant. You are very happy with the pleasant weather that we are seeing. But this is at the cost of a farming sector, because if you see the fact sheet in this screen that you're seeing clearly shows that over the since March and April, you see the red bars that clearly shows that the country has been suffering from hailstorms, and this is across the country. If you can see, last year we had around 25 states that had got a hailstorm, and not in terms of numbers, they're pretty less. But this year, the numbers of hailstorms have gone. The numbers have gone substantially high, and it's across the country. In fact, we had analyzed IMD data to come out with these figures, and if you see, there are some dates on which these hailstorms were recorded from across many states of the country, and that was something worrying that we could realize. But at the same time, we also realized one more thing: when these events are happening, we still could not find data on the loss and damage due to these events in the country at one place. And we had made this point last year also. We had a report that we published in November last year on extreme weather events. And this also we realized just a gap that we have to actually figure out and try to fill it up on the loss and damage due to extreme weather events. Next. Now, so that was about the change between 2022 and 2023. But this next slide is all about the change the country has seen state-wise across in 121 years of India's history, since we have the records on temperature kept by IMD. So what the records show, and in fact, the year 2022 was, I would say, record-breaking from many aspects. First is, except January and February, the mean temperature across 10 months was above normal in last year. That means this is an indicator of climate change, and the temperatures were above normal, and the mean temperature was above normal in last year. The graphic clearly shows you that trend. In fact, 11 out of the 15 years, we have the decade that we have marked in the fact sheet were the hottest in the country. So the other interesting aspect that we could find, again, it's across states of the country, is all 28 states had seen at least 1 month where the temperature was record breaking. And by this, we want to say that the temperature broke record, not just in terms of mean temperature. Temperature records were broken across all 3 parameters, across all the categories of temperature. For example, mean, maximum, minimum. Across all these parameters, we had record-breaking temperature in the country in all the states. At least one state had record-breaking month. And now, just go back. Yeah. In this slide, we're seeing with the title of year-long troubles. What does that indicate? You have 3 maps. The maps indicate maximum, mean, and the minimum temperature where records are broken. When we analyze these numbers, we also realize one more trend, and that's again worrying for us, because it shows that the Himalayan regions in the country are actually threatened. And this trend clearly shows that of at least 7 Himalayan states in the fact sheet that you could see over here have seen the record-breaking temperatures, and over the last 121 years. That means over a century. And this clearly shows that yes, the climate in Himalayan states is changing, and we need to be aware of those changes and also address those changes. But when we talk about how to address the changes, money is what that matters the most. But we came across state government records, state budget records, and we found that there has been over 36% reduction in the amount the state allocated in the budget to addressing the natural calamities. This we have compared the year 22 to 23 with 21-22. But this is an analysis, but even we saw last year also the same trends were there. In the last report also we could find the same trends. And what's even worrying is when you see the slide below, the second slide with the title major cuts, you realize that the larger states, for example, the states of say Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, all those states which have been suffering from natural calamities in terms of floods, drought, etc., have cut down their expense on natural calamities, and that we need to take a note of. Other aspect of why we should worry about climate is people being displaced from their houses. And in fact, this year again was a landmark year from that context as well, globally and nationally as well. In India, we had around 2.5 million people displaced in 2022 due to disasters. But when we see the larger picture, this also shows that all these disasters, in fact, 99% of these disasters were due to displacement due to climate change itself. For example, floods were responsible for most of the displacement in the country. And if I compare this with global figures, globally, almost half of the displacements were due to climate-related disasters. But in our country, almost the entire number of people displaced internally were due to the natural disasters. And if you try to link this with our fact sheet that I showed you in the beginning, where you had larger states like Assam. Assam was in the month of May and June, it got a number of people who were displaced. And again, it was a record-breaking year for Assam as well. So this clearly shows, how the global data and the national data has shown a clear trend and show that we need to address this crisis that climate is leading over here. And this also means that we have to focus on the relief and rehabilitation of people being displaced internally in the country. Now, this fact sheet talks about access to healthy and whether that is affordable for our people or not. Again, this is very figure, because if you see the global picture, of the 3,000 million people in the country who can't afford the healthy diet, over 32% are in our own country. If you see the national picture, within our country, 70.5% of people in the country cannot afford the healthy diet. By that we mean diet which is rich in millets, cereals, nutrients, fruits, vegetables, vitamins, etc. So that's one part we want to address to this fact sheet. At the same time, so while you can't afford a healthy diet, food inflation is what we need to take a note of. And again, and this was a global crisis, and as most of us know, so we have compared the cost, food inflation impact linked to healthy diet globally and in the country as well. We found that the average cost of healthy diet globally went up by 6.7% between 2017 and 2020. But in our own country, it was 5.2%, and it is not less if you see the global picture. And so this clearly shows that food inflation is what we need to take note of. And in context of climate change, if you see, there have been enough evidences that show that if we don't address climate crisis, the impacts of these, for example, floods, drought, etc., definitely affect your crop production, food supply chain, and food inflation is linked to these aspects as well. So we need to also link inflation with other climate-linked impacts as well. Air pollution is an area that we cover almost every year in this book, and this year also we have a chapter on this. And the interesting part of this fact sheet is that we have analyzed the data on air quality in rural areas of the country and the urban areas. Okay? And for this, we have worked with Chicago University. We used their data and we had analyzed their data with the country level data to come out with this analysis. Again, what we found out was, interestingly, many of us know that the year 2020, the year of pandemic, was known for air quality improvement across the country. That was a buzz that was created that yes, the air has become cleaner because people are staying in-house. But now when you see the data over here, despite that, what we found was that the pollution levels were still very high. And they were that high that when we compared them with the life expectancy in the country, we realized that almost 43% of Indian population, the life expectancy would be shortened by 5 years or more. And this fact sheet also shows you that if you are staying in rural areas, if the people in rural areas, then your life expectancy will further shortened by 5 years, 2 months. If you further go deep down in the state level analysis, interestingly, you will find that in Delhi, your life expectancy would have gone down by 10 years, the highest in this state level analysis. Followed by this, you have Uttar Pradesh. In Uttar Pradesh, your life expectancy will go down by 8 years due to air pollution. And this, therefore, it is a crisis. And again, this is also linked to climate crisis because there have been enough evidences to show that both fossil fuel emissions and air pollution are also linked. So if we are able to address climate crisis, we will also be able to address air pollution crisis to a certain extent. So there's also this co-benefit of addressing climate crisis for air pollution benefits. Yeah. So you have seen that we have covered climate crisis, we have covered air pollution crisis so far. So what's the link between those and the health? Again, there are enough evidences to prove that climate and air pollution is linked to our health. And there are other health aspects, but the point of this fact sheet was how much money are we shelling out from our pockets to address the health challenge in the country. And for this, there's an interesting indicator known as out-of-pocket expenditure. We have analyzed that. And so overall, government's expense on health has definitely gone up. The total health expenditure of government has gone up if you compare the trends since 2012, 17, 18. But per capita expenditure on out-of-pocket in the country has actually gone up. And this is what that should worry us. If we have to shell out more money from our pockets to address the health, this is a crisis. And if you remember, Richard had clearly shown you in his fact sheet that under health theme that we had rated states, none of the states scored over. In fact, most of the states were under 60%, 70% in the country. So this clearly is the link between why this indicator matters and what we want to show through this. Yeah. Now, other important aspect that we should all worry is about the rural health infrastructure. Why? Because again, whether it's climate or health, it's the rural people who are the most vulnerable, rural and the poor people. And this also indicates that we need to improve our infrastructure on rural health. And this everybody was talking about during the pandemic. In fact, why rural, even urban health setup has to be improved. But we are talking about the rural health setup in the country. And yes, there have been some improvements. If you see the trends that we're not denying, but despite the improvements, there's still a shortage of the human resources that we need at our health centers across the rural country. For example, if you see, we need special doctors in community health centers, but even today there is 80% shortage of the specialist doctors in our community health centers across the rural country. So in urban areas, we have access to these specialists, but the rural country still needs better access and they need more resources in terms of the specialists. And if you further see, that's interesting thing that I just noticed in the fact sheet was, there's a fact sheet that talks about radiographers in community health centers. Interestingly, Kerala has the highest shortage under radiographers in the country. And I was actually shocked to see that, because general perception is that Kerala is very good in terms of health setup. but there are some indicators that may be worrying if you go deep down. Yeah. Now, this is an area of human and wildlife conflicts. Rajat did talk about that, but again, this also has a link to climate change. For example, this year, India's tiger census was released, and the tiger census has clearly acknowledged that the rise in the conflicts between man and animal is due to climate change. And if you see, these numbers also clearly show that. So there's a link between the rise in conflict and the climate. So the numbers show that the rise, and the scientific report that India has come out with clearly shows that yes, it is linked to climate change as well. So some worrying numbers over here. Elephants have been killing more humans as of now, and the number of human deaths due to elephant attacks have actually gone up, and it's a huge number. 16% increase in human deaths due to elephant attacks. And if you further see the state-wise trends, again, some of the states like Orissa, the numbers have actually gone up, and they're really worrying. So please see the map over here on the tiger. So, but again, the conflicts that you're seeing due to man and animal in India also, now we have the tiger census report shows that it is due to climate change. Again, it's not proven, but yes, it does acknowledge that climate change is linked to this conflicts. And globally also, you have enough evidences coming out from places like African continent that with climate change, the conflict between man and animal are on the rise. So thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you, Rajat. I think fascinating, and I think it has helped us to understand. I think let me just conclude the point that Kiran made, and then I will open it up. It's not as if climate change is the only cause of animal-human conflict. Let's be clear. Animal-human conflict is also happening because of the fact that we are beginning to see habitats of animals go down. We're also beginning to see populations of animals going up. And that's also why this conflict is happening. It's more complicated than that. But the real link with climate change is going to come where the issue of habitat protection comes in. What happens to our forests because of climate change? And that's really where the issues will need to be discussed as the years go on. But we are short of time. We have a few questions, and I'd like a few questions to be answered by my colleagues so that we can then get an idea. Neil Kamal has asked a question, Rajat, on the displacement issue. The question is that is it that there are nearly 32 million people displaced mainly due to disasters, and 25 of these due to unprecedented floods? India records 2.5 million people displaced, which are nearly 7.8% of. What are the main factors under disaster for this displacement in India? What is the data that you have actually show us? Can you give us a quick idea on that?
So, ma'am, indicators, event-specific, Assam flood was one of the main reasons for last year's displacement. Internal displacement is what we're looking at. So, internal displacement, Assam flood was one reason that was there. Besides that, there are reasons like
cyclones,
and
floods is the major reason.
Cyclones and floods are the two major reasons for internal displacement in India.
And your source of data?
So, this is, ma'am, taken from IDMC, that is
International Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC. They have this annual estimates that have been released this year.
Good. So, Neil, I hope that answers your question. There's a question from Mr. Roy. Is there any data on loss of wetlands and loss of agriculture land due to urbanization? Did you find any data on this? Kiran, can you take that question?
On wetlands, India has a census of wetlands, but it is not updated. It's, I think 2013 have also last when we had the wetlands atlas in the country. So I have to check those figures. In terms of land lost due to, can you just repeat the question, please?
Wetlands, loss of wetlands and agriculture loss because of urbanization. Growth of cities, how land use is changing in India.
Yes,
understanding.
Yeah. So we have this atlas on desertification that ISRO releases. So they have released this atlas in 2021 that has state-wise figures on the loss of land due to these factors.
So urbanization is also looked at.
Yeah, it covers that.
And we have in our report covered that as well.
No, ma'am. Last year we did that because it's a, so in last year's book, if they buy it, they can see that analysis as well.
Okay, because
But
the
as
data
a-
has not
yeah.
been updated. Fine, I understand.
But as an
Okay.
indicator, we have covered this in this report.
In the rankings,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
rankings.
We have covered it.
In the
Okay.
rankings, it is one of the.
Okay. Now, the big question is really from Daniel as well as from Ashok Naik. The question about data on loss and damage. And Richard, maybe you can help us to understand this. And then I will ask also Rajat and Kiran. The economic losses in IPCC report and agriculture losses. What is it that you have found on this? Give us a good idea, because I know that all of you have been looking at all data sources on loss and damage. What is the state of that in India today?
Okay, on the India's own experience on estimating loss and damage, it's very varied, and it's done at the state level. And there is no centralized system of measuring the loss and damage. So the data originates from the state. Now, how the state gets its data? The state actually gets its data again, which comes from the village revenue unit. So sometimes what happens, it takes sometimes 2 years even to put the real estimate of loss and damage due to a specific disaster. But what we actually get to deal quickly is that once a disaster strikes, say for example, the last flood in Assam, the state government does a prelim as a practice across the country, prelim loss and damage figure, which is used by the central government for compensations and to design a relief and these things. Otherwise, we don't have any systematic way. But since last 2 years, we are applying a globally accepted loss and damage measuring tool and a way, but that's still being rolled out. So it might take another 4 to 5 years to actually to get that. It was applied in Assam and it was applied in Odisha. So we are yet to see that.
Who applies this tool? Which department of the government applies this tool?
That the Ministry of Home Affairs, which monitors the disasters.
So it's called the Disaster Management Office of the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, they are the ones that put this data out, but the data is, as Richard is saying, very patchy. And clearly, as India moves towards an age of climate change, where we are seeing more and more extreme weather events, we definitely need more rigorous, more updated data on loss and damage. And currently, our own analysis tells us that that's not adequate. The IMD also puts out this data, but that data is no longer available as of the 1st of April. And we do believe that the government, along with there are many departments in the government, particularly the Ministry of Home Affairs, the National Disaster Authority. India needs a better system for both extreme weather events, which come from IMD, but more than that, counting the losses and the damages, which also needs to be done at the global scale, because that's going to be the core of the discussions when it comes to a loss and damage convention globally. Okay. Last question I have from Mr. Kiran, let's conclude this. I have a last question from Mr. P.K. Joshi. An interesting point here. Very interesting, much needed analysis, but 2 quick comments, very important comments. Let's understand what he's saying and see what can we do. 2 quick comments. Instead of using forest cover change, using changes in LULC as a representative of the original ecosystem change would add value. I'm sure data normalization is carried out. Still, outcomes of such analysis are sensitive to data normalization and weight definition methods. Can Kiran and Rajat take this question on the forest issue? What has been your analysis of data? What is available? And what kind of normalization has happened?
Yes, ma'am. So we've given the maximum weightage to forest cover, and the data set is State of Forest Report 2021 and 2019. So over there, we found this. So what the gentleman has suggested is a better indicator, but I don't think we have ready information or data available on it. We have to go back and check once more, but we did not come across this data, recent data on this.
No, I know this data doesn't exist, but Kiran, please.
No, so this doesn't exist, but there are better indicators of forest cover that we can monitor next year. For example, the data on, say, very dense forest, moderate forest. If we categorize those forest types, then we may have better analysis next year. So we're just thinking about that.
Okay. There is a question on, is there any information on the incentives paid in terms of PES and certification? Ecosystem services.
No, we have not looked at it. In this book, we haven't. Yeah,
Richard, you had a comment here?
Yeah, I think we don't have very individual level things, but under the Finance Commission, sharing of central tax pool, the forested states, particularly the Himalayan states, are being given an incentive because the argument is that they have been protecting the forest, and that gives you an ecosystem to the whole country, and this would be compensated. So there is a provision at the state level under the Finance Commission model.
No, okay, Richard, actually that model has been withdrawn in the last Finance Commission report. And in fact, now there is no such incentive giving to states. So I think that's also something maybe we should look at some point in terms of data. But clearly what I think I will end by one major question that we have is, what is the good news in all this? And I would like each one of our three presenters to tell us from their analysis, what have you found is the good news that you can tell everybody? Is something happening where the trend is on the good side? Please tell us. Richard, starting with you.
I think if you look at the good news, the increase in spread of clean energy, at least at the household level, the LPG, that's a good news. That's where we're definitely progressing well. And that's a good health news also.
Good, very good point. Rajat?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, broadly what we realized is that data monitoring and updation is improving. However, the rate and the gaps also exist in it. So basically, like we saw in municipal solid waste, 50% of it is actually being cleaned up or processed right now, treated right now, which is a substantial increase from last year. However, 32% data gap exists. So such problems were there, but the data quality is improving for sure.
Kiran?
And also, for your interesting dashboards by the Government of India on various aspects. So if you want to really scavenge data from different sources, it's actually your first point source it could refer to. But at the same time, if you want to compare data across the states, so that uniformity is still lacking. So that has to be looked at for the future. Other good news that I could see is in terms of river pollution. We're comparing the number of rivers cleaned over the past few years. There has been some improvement. We should not deny that. So in fact, states have been ranked based on that. So percentage of river pollution stretches cleaned over the past 4 years. So Arunachal got the ranking #1 based on that indicator. So that's something good that's happening. So we should not deny that. Yeah, good.
Good. I think there's clearly what data is powerful from that perspective, because it tells you the bad and the good and tells you trends. And there is good news. And I think we should celebrate it. And I think the best news for us will be if this data, the rigor of the data, the quality of the data continues to improve so that we can bring more analysis. Before I end, I have two things. One, I want to acknowledge Nivedita's very important comment that she has put on chat, where she had done a story on the whole issue of loss and damage. And NDMA told her that following the recommendation of the Finance Commission, which has allocated resources for recovery and reconstruction, there would be a push for assessing damages and loss for all disasters. Such assessments would, over a period of time, build a database of national level loss and damage as well as displacement. I think very important. Thank you, Nivedita, for asking the question. Clearly, the proof is going to be how soon can we get the data, What are the systems that will be put together? And for that, I think they will need to do this at the national level, not just leave it to states, because the data that will have to be collected will have to be done through a uniform system. And I think that's the bottom line of what we have found is how we have not been able to use many cases, as I was checking with my colleagues, trends and analysis, because the data is not uniform. We need comparable data. So clearly, we need to improve the quality of data that we have in this country. We need to make sure that we have much better information that will allow all of us to understand what's happening. Many of you have asked, will the information be available? The presentations be available? Please forgive us. This time we are not putting the presentations up, but we have the report for download. And I hope that all of you will download it and pay the nominal amount for the rich information that we have put together for you. And Ramiz, that will also put together the information. You will find whatever information we have on J&K State, whatever exists, we have put together. This data, this report's limitation, and I'm emphasizing that again, whatever limitations that you find in this report, please understand the limitation is not us. Rajit, Kiran, Richard, and the full team have done an incredible job in putting together the databases, processing it. And then I want to acknowledge in particular the art team at CSE, which has made sure that we can visualize this data, because the data is as good as numbers unless you can visualize it. And I want to recognize our art director, Ajit, who I'm not sure is here right now, and his entire team for putting together this incredible piece of information, which helps us in one look to understand what is it that we are seeing in a million numbers. So please do download the report. Please see it. Please get back to us. We will do this each year. We will improve. And I can tell you this report and the work that Rajat, Kiran, Richard, and the entire Down to Earth has done has only improved each year. And we will keep doing it and keep bringing you the news, keep bringing you this information. That is our commitment to you. And I hope you will find it useful. You will use it. And this information will help us to change perspectives, change the way we do things, and inspire people, but also bring us a certain sense of reality. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being with us on this Sunday. And we've really encroached upon your lunch. And I really look forward that we will keep talking and keep meeting and keep discussing. Thank you very much. Thank you.